Wednesday, it was absolutely apparent that the fires are a couple hours from here. The way the winds were blowing, it smelled like you were in a cookout. It was amazing, actually. And then today, driving to the rink, it's so obvious the smoke that's up in the air. So it's not something today that I really smelled, but you could see it. So that's a little scary. And then down in Anaheim, it was just, the weather is absolutely gorgeous. It's been an amazing trip, and it looks like it's going to be that way until we get back next Wednesday. It's a 10-day trip, odd trip too. 4 games in 10 days. They have a couple off days in LA. And geographically nonsensical. They start in Anaheim, come up to San Jose, go down to Phoenix, then back to LA, have a couple off days in LA. It is funny when you get older as a beat writer, though. This is the type of trip that months ago I'd be like looking forward to for months, like all these off days and things like that. And now you're on the trip and you're kind of like, maybe it's because we've been on the road constantly, but it's just like going into it, it's like I wasn't really looking forward to it. And then I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, God, why couldn't they put a back-to-back here? Yeah. Isn't it funny? I mean, when you get older, like how it is, where years ago, it's like, man, this is going to be awesome. 10 days and on the West Coast. And now you're just like, God, I've been on the road constantly. Again, by the time we get back from this trip, it's going to be 13 of the first 18 games on the road. It's just absolutely just a crazy, grueling schedule for a team that in a lot of ways, for a lot of years, has been very home happy in the first month of the season.
Yeah, I tell you, I feel it. I talked with Cheryl Reeve on her show the other day. It's like when I travel these days, even if it's a short trip, even if I don't even have a drink or have any fun or even do anything on the trip, I get home. It's like I don't feel right for like another 36 hours.
Well, I don't really feel that, but the act of traveling is just a lot more strenuous than it used to be. I mean, and frankly, I mean, and with all due respect, because I love the airport, but there's no other other than say New York. In places like that, there's maybe LA. There's no worse airport to fly out of right now than MSP, and it's gonna be like this for a couple of years. Like that construction in the front to get through security. I mean, even TSA pre-check and clear can take you freaking 25, 30 minutes in security right now. It's just, it's. The other day I was online just to check a bag at Delta for an 11:30 flight, and there had to be 150 people in front of me to check a bag. At the Delta Sky Priority line. It's just it's just the construction they're doing in the front right now. So it's just it's been just a bit of a pain in the first month and a half of the season. Every time you get to the airport, it's different procedures just because of the construction and the way everything is laid out. I thought this is something that was going to be done in the next 4 or 5 months. Then somebody in the TSA pre-check line the other day was telling me that no, this is going to like 2022 or something. So it's they're redoing the entire both the baggage claim area and the departure area of the airport. So which you got to do. I mean, you got to modernize and all that stuff. But man, it's just and if you are on a like 6 a.m. flight or 6:30 or 7 a.m. flight, I mean, you better get there a couple hours before the flight. It is so stressful. Just the amount of people. It's just chaos. And if you're flying with people that are not used to that or aren't used to, where to go at MSP, it's just a sea of people like you're at the State Fair or at the front of MSP right now for those early morning flights.
Ugh. You're scaring me. I have a lot of travel coming up the rest of the year between Vikings and some other trips I'm taking. It's a pet peeve for me, Michael, because it's not like if a restaurant gets rushed. If like 100 people walk in to a restaurant the restaurant isn't planning on, I understand that's the difficulty. People at airports, they know exactly how many people are coming and what time they're flying. They should be able to handle it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was, it's one thing with the security stuff and the dealing with that construction, but I was pretty disappointed. I love Delta. I mean, I think everybody knows that, but I was really disappointed with the front of Delta the other day at Sky Priority that they had like 5-6 agents working with 100 people in line just at the Sky Priority area. Now I know I will say it went shockingly fast, but man, it's just again what it does is it wears you down. It just creates to a point that when you've been on the road for 13 out of 18 games, it just creates a fatigue level that just makes it not exactly the most fun existence. And I'm sure people listening to this, Russo's whining about being a freaking sports writer, but I'd love to do that type thing. I'm just saying that it's been a tough grind of a season of a start here, and the players themselves should be very, very happy that they don't have to fly commercial because they have it a tad easier than us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, check out Fixology Repair during your travels. They have a shop in Toledo, but of course, we're going to hype the ones that they have in the Twin Cities. New office, new business, new site in St. Paul Skyway near the Xcel Energy Center, near the Wild offices. The one you've probably seen if you walk downtown above Crown Bank in downtown Minneapolis in the Skyway, and of course the mothership at the Mall of America, which has all kinds of cool stuff for sale, including their repair department. Fixology Repair, fixologyrepair.com.
Hi, this is John with Fixology Repair. For the better part of a decade, we've been privileged to serve you for all of your jewelry, watch, and smartphone repair needs at the Mall of America. Since Minnesotans largely hate going to the mall, we expanded 2 years ago to reach you in the Minneapolis Skyway. And now this year, we're pleased to announce we have a new location at Wells Fargo Place in the St. Paul Skyway. All 3 shops are equipped to help with your watch and cell phone repair needs on-site, while all jewelry, computer, and game consoles will be completed at the Mall of America store. Please bring us your repair challenges, and don't forget to mention the Talk North podcast for a 10% discount on all of our services.
All right, unless you have something else, let's hit some Twitter questions.
Yeah, no, go for it.
From Jeff Ruland, where does Bruce coach in 2021? If not the Wild, anywhere. The man seems to be a coach down to his bones.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to want to coach. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are going to be potentially looking for coaches. Maybe San Jose here. I'm trying to think what else. Is that like what type of music was that in the background?
I got a new phone, and that was an alarm going off that I don't remember setting.
Okay. It sounded like
it's actually my Michael Russo groove music.
Yeah, I know. Trying to think. I mean, San Jose potentially, Detroit potentially, but I mean, I'm saying that there could be openings.
Right.
Toronto, which would be his dream job. Trying to think who else.
His dream job because of the city or the franchise?
Both. Dallas. Again, he's going to be 60-something years old. Whether or not those teams are going to want to go with an older coach at that point is going to be the biggest question mark. If this is his last year here in Minnesota, but really, frankly, the shame of him not getting fired at the end of last season is that there were 7 or 8 coaching jobs available, including, a couple like up in Buffalo, which would have been a perfect job for him. So you have him come to the season as sort of a lame duck coach. Probably, I'm sure he didn't want to be fired, but from a personal standpoint, frankly, Jim, he would have had a lot of opportunity last summer that might not be there this summer.
Right, absolutely. From Alec, our old friend, with there being a trade last night, do you think other teams will follow suit?
I don't know. I mean, it's a minor trade. Fabry coming off a couple major knee injuries. Young 23-year-old that wasn't getting a ton of opportunity in St. Louis anymore. I think teams are scared off by his injuries. And DeLauro's, I don't know what type of player he's going to be, but that to me is like the type of easy deal that it's not huge cap implications. But yeah, I mean, it's going to start to open things up. But in this league with so many teams close to the cap, it usually impact moves come very much closer to the trade deadline.
Sure. Hey, by the way, for all of our listeners, please follow us at Talk North Pod. In the next couple of months, we might have some announcements. Maybe we'll do some giveaways. We'll do some special stuff on the Twitter feed, Talk North Pod. Follow us there as well as our individual accounts. We appreciate it. From Nikolai, are the Wild a bottom 5 team this year, or do you think they play themselves into a pick around 10?
Well, it's funny because you watch a game like Anaheim the other day and you realize, one, as I've mentioned a couple times, there's some crummy teams in this conference right now that might be crummier than the Wild. And the other thing is that when you see them play a game like that the other night, you do still realize that there's a lot of game left in a lot of these bodies, and that there's just there's some good players on the Wild that have pride, that aren't just going to not play hard. And we saw it the other night. I mean, Zuccarello is a good player. Eric Stahl, after the first period, everybody in the first period struggled. But after the first period, that is as good a game as we've seen from Eric Stahl in 2 years. He was freaking awesome the other night. He was so good in front of the net. Watch the shift that Fiala scored on, how good he was in front of the net. That pass by Zucker was in his skates. He had to almost cup his ankle to get down on one knee to score the winning goal that night. These are, and eventually, Parisi's going to start to play well. I thought Parisi again in Anaheim the other night had a really tough game from start to finish. But Mikko was really good that night. There's the problem with them is that they've got wow, what is that?
I swear to God, my phone just goes off randomly. I don't know what to do about it. It's driving me crazy.
Maybe you could have Brandon come over and.
You know what? It happened to me in a Vikings press conference the other day, and I'm like the kind of person who hates it. I like death stare anybody who lets their phone interrupt a press conference, and it happened to me the other day. I was so embarrassed.
John Tortorella isn't Mike Zimmer.
Oh. So, yeah, well, Zimmer, and
the opposite.
If Zimmer wanted to yell at me, I would have taken it because no journalist should ever let their phone go off in a press conference, and now I'm that idiot.
Why do you change from an iPhone?
Because my iPhone was from like 1932. Okay. And the options of upgrading did not include an iPhone and include an Android. And listen, I've had the phone 2 days, and actually, I like a lot of things about the phone. It's much more modern. It looks better. It's much better battery. I just don't know how to shut the damn thing off yet.
I don't like that the group messages now between me, you, and Brandon are green.
Well, and that is, not that would be a first world problem, Michael.
It's like I try to not include Gorg on group messages because it changes the whole font from blue to green.
Sure, that's the reason you don't want Gorg on your group messages.
Exactly.
Let's thank Tony Hoagland, HOAGLUND, Tony Hoagland, your State Farm agent in Champlin. And this is a great place to get the idea that you might want to check out your insurance options with Tony, considering he handles my insurance and he handles Michael's insurance, and he's been doing it for a long time now.
Hi, Talk North listeners. I wanted to let you all know about State Farm's new program called Quotes for Good. We partner with local nonprofits to raise money for great causes. For the Russo-Souhan Show, I'll be donating $16 to the Jason and Carly Zucker Give 16 campaign that benefits the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. When you call in, be sure to mention the show so that we can track the donations. You can reach us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at champlininsurance.com.
From Mitch Perzicilli, what was it like covering Jacques Lemaire? And did you have a good working relationship? Any funny Jacques stories? Of course, we used to talk about Jacques all the time, but it's been a while. Any memories you want to share?
Yeah, I loved covering Jacques. I learned a ton from him. Every time I cover a coach, I feel like I learn more about the game because every coach has different verbiage. Every coach has different styles. That's everybody from any coach I've ever covered. I covered in Florida. I covered Doug McClain. I covered Dwayne Sutter. I covered Mike Keenan. I covered Terry Murray. I covered Brian Murray. I covered John Torchetti, Rick Dudley down there, tons, Jacques Martin. And then in Florida, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody in Florida, but I covered, Jacques Lemaire, obviously Todd Richards, Mike Yeo, John Torchetti, and Bruce Boudreau. And every time you have a different coach, it's different. Even, Todd Richards almost feels like a blip on the radar because it was only a couple of years, but just dealing with him for a couple of years, you learn just new ways that the game is taught. And here's a star offensive defenseman, both in high school and at the University of Minnesota. And he had a different way that he looked at the game than, say, a Mike Yeo. And so from Jacques' perspective, that guy has forgotten more hockey than most every coach in this league knows. He had a great way of talking. He was so funny in English that I could only imagine how funny he was in French. My favorite stories with Jacques are just sitting there and hanging out with him outside of a hotel before he's waiting for the bus as he's smoking one of those little tiny kind of like cigar type things. And just listen to him tell stories about the old days was awesome. Again, my favorite story was opening night. One year, it actually would have been, I think, Patrick Kane's NHL debut, so 2007. The Wild won the game 1-0. It wasn't a great game. He had just had LASIK surgery from Dr. Samuelson like a week before or something. And he opened his presser by saying, I want to have my LASIK reversed. I saw too much. It just mean, it was just like everything, stuff like that. And then I think one of the coolest stories is that when he quote unquote retired from the Wild or resigned, after the presser, he pulled me aside and look, at the very beginning of me covering